Hi, my name is Lowell Joseph Gallen, and I would like to welcome our studio audience and our viewers and listeners worldwide to tonight's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series hosted here at the OU Israel Center in Jerusalem, Israel. I'm always proud to say as the years go by that in this case we are celebrating the 23rd year of our conference and lecture series, which began in January 1995 on a subject very much related to tonight's subject. The subject in January was Sigmund Sobolewski, who was a Catholic Polish Auschwitz survivor, gave a talk. And what was his subject? What's wrong with the Auschwitz Museum? This is 23 years ago. It doesn't say anything about Jews. And he was 6'5", he's still alive, he lives in Canada, Polish Catholic, and he said, I have a problem with this because I was there, I was a prisoner, and while some non-Jews were murdered, this is primarily a Jewish death camp, not a concentration camp. The British had concentration camps in 1900 for the Boers. They didn't intentionally put people there to kill them. It was a death camp. You were worked to death before you died, unlike Treblinka, where you went straight from the trains to the ovens and the gas chambers. And here we are again 23 years later, and the issue for tonight's talk by Dr. Les Glassman, a well-known and beloved Israeli Jewish patriot and Zionist from South Africa, and dentist. Anyone need your teeth fixed, go see Les, is on Sempo Sugihara, a righteous Gentile, the Japanese consul in Kovno, Lithuania, who ended up issuing 6,000 visas to Jews, including visas for the entire Mir Yeshiva from Poland, and how this colossal act of righteousness begins in a candy store in an encounter between a 12-year-old boy named Sali Ganor and this. To him, remember you're in Lithuania, Japanese look different from Lithuanians. You're 12 years old and there's a little Japanese guy, and it starts in an encounter between them. Which just goes to show you, you never know who you're talking to. Don't think it's Rumpelstiltskin, it could be Elijah the prophet. Like in Beauty and the Beast, when the little lady comes to the castle and he shuts the door on the little lady, the princess. I don't like that, so I'm putting a curse on you. Be careful with little old ladies and Rumpelstiltskins. They might not be who you think they are. We think they are. So I want to thank also lifelong friend, Mr. Larry Pfeffer of Budapest, Hungary, who is a living example of righteousness, who has a 1-year-old baby. He was saved from the Nazis by a Christian Hungarian family. That's why he's still alive. We will take questions and comments after the lecture, which involves the presentation of the film. Les, are you taking questions and comments during the talk or after the talk?
Can take during the talk?
Les will take during. Everyone has their own style. Now I want to add one note before we start.
That's good.
Because I don't have to tell any of you about the uproar that's just been going on in Poland over who's a victim and who's not. Even though it's complete nonsense what the Polish government is saying, and I have a Polish son-in-law who lives in Israel with my daughter and my granddaughter. It's from a family that hid their Jewish identity. If you look beneath the nonsense, and also you can see where the Jews of Hollywood, if you actually talk to Slavs and Jews, and you just exchange the crucifix with a Star of David, we're not too different. Schmaltzy, sentimental, superstitious, and proud. So if you just throw out the window a little bit the stupid things that Polish politicians are saying, what are they really saying? As Les will point out in his lecture, Sempo Sugihara ended up being one of the 10 most beloved men in Japan for Japanese, for their history. They're proud of him. Every nation wants to be proud of anything anyone did that was good. So I just say before we begin, friendship between peoples should primarily be planted in gardens, not graveyards, which doesn't mean you don't have graveyards. But in the long run, that's not going to work. Guilt routines and talking about graveyards is not a way to build relations between peoples or for people to develop respect for themselves. You want to help those people in Europe who want to have a new Europe, You have to encourage them to remember those who resisted and fought back and did what was right, without at all forgetting most who did nothing or did what was wrong. Now I give this over to Les, who is going to talk to us about Simple Sugihara and the 6,000 visas he issued, and from that probably there are 100,000 grandchildren and great-grandchildren by now. Les. Any questions and comments during the talk?
Okay, I want to really thank you, Lal. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. And I want to thank you all for coming. You know, it's a week before Pesach, it's Pesach cleaning, and time is very limited, and you've really all made a tremendous effort to be here, so I really, really appreciate it. The many people in the audience that I know personally, and those who I don't know, I want to get to know you, but really, I really want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I know it's not an easy time to be here, but I hope you get inspired from this most incredible person who should be in the forefront of Jewish history. What Lal mentioned, what's interesting, in Sugihara's lifetime, he was kind of unknown. And today, if you see any Japanese, and I've done this in Bandung, in Indonesia, when I was there for a stamp exhibition, I'll actually show you, you ask any Japanese, the chances are that everybody knows, or the majority know who Sugihara is, because he's one of the top 10 heroes of all time Japan today. I'll just show you something quite amazing, which I actually got from the post office this morning. I got it on eBay. This is a stamp from Somaliland of Sugihara. There's also stamps from Mozambique. So you can actually pass these down, and I'll show you on the. So here's a stamp with a miniature sheet from Mozambique of Sugihara. Israel issued a stamp of the 5 diplomats, and Sugihara was one of those. Lithuania has issued a stamp, and so has Japan. But what's interesting, in his lifetime, he was unknown. And what I found quite amazing, I have quite a few patients that learn at the Mir Yeshiva here in Jerusalem. And if you ask them, how was the Mir saved? And I ask all of them, they all know that I ask them, because I'm fascinated in the subject. I'd say that 99% know that it went to Shanghai. They all know that it went to Shanghai. But you ask them, how did it get there? And the majority had no idea. And I think it's really pretty sad, because I'm going to show you some other videos. Tonight you're going to see quite a lot of original footage. The Abshimaba Rebbe's mother, before she was Nefta, was invited to meet the Sugihara son when he came here. There's a street in South Netanya named after Sugihara by the planetarium. It's really beautiful. When you go to Netanya, the South Park, the South Beach, they've got this beautiful planetarium, and there's a street called Sugihara. And the son was here, and he went to the Mir. After they named the street, the mayor of Netanya, they made a big deal. Japanese television was there. It was very, very well advertised, and it was very well publicized in Japan. In Israel, it was like not that well advertised. I don't know how many of you even know that there is a street in Netanya named after Sugihara. Anyway, he came to the Mir, the son, and they invited the Amshinov Rebbe's mother, she really used to go out and bike for gun. I love you bike for gun. I've been to that Rebbe shul. Anyway, she went, and people said to her, "No, how come you're leaving bike for gun?" So she said, "If it wasn't for the father, I wouldn't be here." And it's Karasatov. So this evening is a lot of Karasatov for a very, very special person. I'm going to mention the whole talk of this evening is why did he do what he did. So I'm just going to give you a brief outline, and then we're going to watch some very interesting footage that I managed to get from the original VHSs, which we converted into a DVD. It's a whole story in itself. And my advice is, anyone who's got old VHS, you must convert it, because they deteriorate and they don't last. So I was very fortunate to get some of these VHSs. Before I start the talk, I'd like to ask, has anybody in the hall heard of my hero, the name Sonny Ganor? Have any of you heard of him, Sonny Ganor? Wow. Okay, so Sonny, he wrote a book. It's quite amazing. He wrote a book called Light One Candle. This is his book. And the author of Schindler's List writes at the back of his book. But what's the most amazing thing about Sonny's book, there's something that's written in the front cover, And it goes like this: it's important that this book be read by many in the present generation and the next. And this was by the US Representative Nancy Pelosi. She wrote this, and she's head of the Democratic Party. So I'm going to tell you who Soli was. So, in the outbreak of the war, when the Germans, when they invaded Poland, I'm just going to give you a brief outline, and then we're going to watch some amazing footage, and then I'm going to try to explain to you why Sugihara did what he did. When the war started and the Germans invaded Poland, quite a few of the Jews in Poland, they fled to independent Lithuania. And 2 days ago, I was at a conference here in Yerushalayim on combating anti-Semitism, and I spoke to the deputy ambassador, the Lithuanian ambassador. And it's actually quite an interesting thing that Lithuania actually allowed the Jews to come in. That's also not so well known. But a lot of the Jews fled Poland and they came into Lithuania, which was independent at the time. And they were staying in Kovno and in Vilna. And Hanukkah time, 39, there's a little boy called Soli Ganor. His parents gave him Hanukkah geld. The next day, his sister and his brother were out, his parents were out. A woman knocks on the door and she says, "Have you got any money in the home to help fellow Yidden, the Polish Yidden that are destitute?" All the Hanukkah geld that he had, he gave her. He did a mitzvah. He gave her the Hanukkah geld that he had. He felt sorry for the fellow Yidden. Anyway, he's walking along the main avenue. There's a very nice, it's the main boulevard. It's called Lefkas Avenue in Kovno in Kaunas. It's a very long boulevard, it's the main street. He's walking along that main street and he sees an advert for Laurel and Hardy. And then if you remember Laurel and Hardy, if you know who it is, today when you tell the kids, a lot of them know Charlie Chaplin, but Laurel and Hardy, they call him Shamin Barazé, the fat one and the thin one. Anyway, he wanted to see the Laurel and Hardy movie, but he had no money because he had given it away. So he went to his aunt. His aunt had a confectionery shop. Her name was Anushka. And it was very close, he had a very close connection with his aunt. So he goes into the shop, and who happened to be there? But there was Sugihara. Now the Sugihara was the Japanese consul general. He was a very, very bright, a very upcoming diplomat. He was fluent in Russian and German. One of the reasons, and this is also a fascinating thing which we'll speak about, and if you've got any questions, if you look at the whole story of the journey of the Mir Yeshiva, every single place that the Mir went, and I think it's fascinating, there's a book called Escape to Shanghai, but every single route that they took, in my opinion, it was a miracle. Japan never had an embassy in Lithuania. Never. It was unheard of. So why did they open one in Kovno? So one of the reasons given is that because Sugihara was fluent in Russian and German, the Japanese wanted to use him also for intelligence. And that's what he did, and you'll see he's saying this in the movie. He used to gain intelligence of what the Germans were doing in Lithuania, in that area, in the Russians, and with that, he would help his own government, the Japanese government. Anyway, he established this consul in the beginning, it was like in the fall of 39, and he was there in this confectionery shop that happened to be Soli Ganor's aunt's. Anyway, Soli asks his aunt if she can give him some money to watch the movie. And she said, for sure, no problem. She goes to the cash register, and then she tells Sugihara, her client, that this is my nephew. That he gave a bit of charity, and I'm just going to give him a bit of money to watch the movie. So Sugihara goes up to Soli, and he takes out of his pocket some money to give him. And Soli says to him, I can't take from you, you're not my family. So Sugihara says to him, I'll be your uncle. And us growing up as kids in South Africa, we used to call our parents' friends uncle and aunt. That's just the way we did it. It was like a sign of respect. Anyway, Soli, being 12 years old, said to Sugihara, if you're my uncle, then you have to come to our home for Hanukkah. So what happened is Sugihara went with his wife and his wife's sister, who was there as their nanny. She used to help with the kids, and Anushka, his aunt. Motzei Shabbos, they went to the Ganor family. And they spent Hanukkah. And he developed an instant connection with the Ganor family, with Soli's parents. And they just loved being there. What happened was that the Ganors had they were hosting a father and a daughter. The mother was killed. The name was Greenblatt. They came over from Poland. And he could not believe that at this Hanukkah party was a diplomat. Where in the world would you get in 1939 a foreign diplomat being in a Jewish home? It was unheard of. It was just didn't happen. But here at this Hanukkah party was this Japanese diplomat. And Greenblatt mentioned to Sugihara, he couldn't believe it. He told him how bad the situation was for the Jews in Poland. And he said, maybe you can help us get out of here. We're destitute. And they said this is the first time that the topic of visas came up. Anyway, Greenblatt made the connection also with Sugihara. And as Jewish history goes and Jewish geography, Greenblatt told other Jews, other Polish Yin, that there was a Japanese diplomat that was close to the Jews, that he had a kind heart. And a few months later, quite a few Polish Yin came to the consul. There's a very famous picture of everybody standing outside the consulate. And Sugihara saw about, there was between 100 and 200 people. He asked one of the workers if they could choose 5 people that he could speak with. One of those 5 who came in to see him was Zorach Verhaftig. I can ask the audience, have any of you heard of Zorach Verhaftig?
Minister of Religion.
So Zorach Verhaftig was the chairman of those 5. He was the leader of those 5 that came in to speak to Sugihara to plead for exit visas. They had been given entry visas into Curacao. It's in the Caribbean. It's a whole story in itself, which we'll see in this video, through the Dutch consulate, and we must be extremely grateful what the Dutch did as well. That's another miracle in itself, with Jan Zwartendijk, that he gave visas to go to Curacao, that's near Suriname, but they needed to get exit visas. And Zorach Verhaftig was the person that asked Sugihara for these visas. I met with his son, Emmanuel, who lives in Kfar Lumim. We had a long interview about 3 weeks ago. It was fascinating. Zorach Verhaftig's father was very close with the Chazon Ish, and he was a big Talmid Chacham. And Zorach in his own right was also Talmid Chacham. We have Shnei Shushad, Rabbi Shushad, who's read some of the writings of the father. But he was a very big Talmid Chacham, and what happened was that Zorach, not only that, he was given, in those days you could get, and it was very rare, certificates to enter, it was then British controlled by Palestine, to come back to Eretz Israel. And he was given a certificate for him and his wife. And Zorach said no. He gave it to his uncle, and he decided that he would stay in Kovno. He said, my tough kid, I have to try help fellow Yidden. And he stayed in Kovno. And he also has a tremendous part in Jewish history. What's amazing about Zorach Verhaftig, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, and we're coming up for the 70th anniversary, his name is right next to Ben Gurion's. And his son told me that before they signed it, they'd already signed the Declaration of Independence, but they left spaces for the others that they wanted to sign. And they sent a plane to Jerusalem, and Zorach with the 2 others went onto the plane. They had to tie themselves in rope to get to Tel Aviv, and they signed the Declaration of Independence with the same pen that everybody else had signed. But he was a minister of religion in this government, and he played a very important role in the whole story with Sugihara. So we're just going to watch a little bit of the original footage, and then I'm going to show you a few more other incredible video footage and stories that I hope it will inspire you. So if you can just bear with me, and then during the talk and after the video isn't, the first one that I'm going to show isn't that long, but it's a very, very interesting. You can actually see the people in the story. Do you know, just before that you'll know who we're talking about, people say, well, how was the Mir saved? The Mir Yeshiva today, you can actually say it's the greatest yeshiva. And the whole Mir was saved intact. 300 passports were taken by Moshe Zuknik. The Rav Finkel, the Rosh Yeshiva, heard that there was a Japanese consul general that also had a close keshur with the Yidden, and he sent Moshe Zuknik, who was a student who actually came from Frankfurt. He was studying in the Mir, and he came to Sugihara, and you'll actually see him in the video. When you read it, when you actually see the person, it's unbelievable. And people at the consulate, when they saw somebody with 300 passports, they said, Sugihara will never agree to this, but he did. And he said, as long as you help. And if I tell you the ironies of history, one of the people, and you'll see a picture of him, one of the people that helped him actually sign the 300 visas was a German worker in the consulate. So a German who actually went back to Germany, he was one of those that helped sign the visas that saved the Mary Yeshiva. I mean, it's just unbelievable, these stories, but it's real. And you'll actually see the people in this video. So without any further ado, I'm just going to put on the video. We're not going to watch the whole thing because there are other very, very important things that I want to show you. And I just want to, before we go into the video, the whole story with Sugihara and with Amshanov already, he was also saved. Before his daughter, the Amshanov's daughter, she was a young girl at the time when they went to Shanghai. So last year, she actually met with, which I mentioned to you, she met with Sugihara. And they said, well, why you know, you really got a wife again. And she said, it's really Karasatov. And you're going to see why it's such Karasatov, what he did, what he did. So if you can just bear with me for a few minutes, I'm just going to fast forward the video.
Les, while you're doing that, can I make a comment? It won't take long. Someone made a very good point to me before, and he's right. I mentioned to you that my friend Larry was, and it's true, saved by a Christian family in Hungary, and he mentioned the German who helped Sugihara, and we know about Oscar Schindler. Now I'm going to tell you something you won't hear from any Jewish organizational or Israeli government representative because they'd be afraid of anti-Semitism. I was accepted to a doctoral program in Holocaust Studies to begin in 1980 under the supervision of Reverend Dr. Franklin Littell, who died a year ago, who was the only non-Jewish member at that point of Yad Vashem's International Council. And my doctorate was to be on what the churches did and didn't do before, during, and after the Shoah. The real truth is more terrible than anything you'll be told by any Israeli government or Jewish organizational representative. The fact is, primarily the Catholic Church is responsible for 1900 years of mass murder, mass torture, and mass vilification of Jews, without any precedent in history for crimes committed by one group against another. In every place the church went, including India, you were given the choice of conversion or death. It's not the same with Islam. But when you tell people for 1900 years, this people murdered your God, and it's in your music, your art, your liturgy, your mythology, your poetry, and everything, it enters into the subconscious of those people who you're educating. Now go try to undo that. It doesn't go away because at the so-called Vatican Council in 1963 with Pope John the 23rd, it says, well, you know, we do you a favor. It's true that 1.5 million Jewish children went up the chimneys of our gas chambers, but you're not all guilty of killing Jesus. If I was advising God, I said, drop an asteroid on Rome right now. This is beyond chutzpah, it's beyond blasphemy. I don't have a word for it. So yes, there were individual nuns, priests, prelates, or individual people who were born Christian, whether they believed or not, who did save Jews. What? You ready? But that is very much the exception to the rule. So a heavy, heavy, heavy sword of judgment hangs over the Catholic, state Protestant, and Eastern Orthodox churches. And there haven't been much changes till now, despite all the phony interfaith dialogues where vague statements are made. Not much has changed at all. So the person who pointed this out is absolutely right. I just wanted to tell you so. Now we'll begin.
And World War II began. Russia attacked Poland from the east. Polish Jews were trapped between the terror of the two invaders, and many fled to the neighboring independent nation of Lithuania. More than 15,000 Polish Jews escaped across the border, including several entire yeshivas, Jewish religious academies. The prestigious Mir Yeshiva fled with over 300 teachers and students. The homeless refugees were supported by a Lithuanian Jewish population that numbered nearly 250,000. Lithuanian Jews invited the refugees into their homes,
Thank you, Mr. Sugihara. We will come to see you again. And he came running after the train. I couldn't stop crying. When I think about it, even now, I can't help crying.
We're not finished. I think it's a little bit, it's pretty heavy, the end part, but it's quite amazing. I want to show you something quite, for me, it kind of changed my life. I did a movie when we were in Lithuania. We were in the consulate of Sugihara in Ganor, and it was a busload of Japanese. You couldn't believe it, a whole busload of Japanese came to the consulate. So, unlike the hidden in our group, we were all talking. We're just watching the movie, but they had busloads of Japanese, and they're exactly. There's busloads of Japanese come every day to Ganor to pay homage to Sugihara. So,
could you explain this, what year this was?
this that I took this video of these Japanese.
No, just now. That you said hundreds of people come.
This very day, there's the Prime Minister of Japan was in Lithuania a month ago, and he made sure that the one day he went to Ganor and he went to the consulate to pay homage to Sugihara. And these busloads of Japanese, they come every day. It's like for them a Makam Kadosh, it's like a holy pilgrimage that they come to the consulate, and like the Yidden, we were like all talking, and they come in single file, they sit, they're so good, they're just incredible. But for them it's a very spiritual experience. So when I heard the story of Sali, I made a video of Lithuania and we showed it at World Mizrahi. And our scholar of residence of our tour was Hugh Reichland. He's very passionate about Jewish history, and he was our scholar in residence. He's from Joburg, Hugh Reichland. So he told me, and he told the whole audience, that he actually spoke to Sonny. That Sonny, this little boy who invited Sugihara, is still alive. He was 89. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I said to Hugh, you have to give me his number, which he did. I phoned Sonny immediately, and Motzei Shabbos I went to his home, and I interviewed him. He's my hero, he remains my hero. I'm going to show you there if we can put the lights on a little bit. This was a bit of an interview that I did with Sonny. It was before Rosh Hashanah last year.
This is the book called Visas for Life.
Yeah, by Sugihara. That's Sugihara's part of the book.
And it's written also in Japanese. This is the
original
version.
in Japanese.
Yeah, she mentions you in the
Side.
This is Sali Ganor.
Picture of the
This is the Jewish boy.
Oh.
Look what she writes. Can you see what she writes?
So if you could read it, it would be wonderful to...
Due to Sugihara's decision to issue visas, may have been influenced by a 14-year-old Jewish boy named Ganor. He invited Mr. Sugihara to celebrate the first night of Hanukkah in 1939 with his family. This may have been Sugihara's first contact with a Jewish family in Kansas. And here a picture of Jews in Kobe, of survivors. See at the bottom.
There's the button and there's a picture of you. But she mentioned, Sonny, that is what I mentioned to you, that you made history. And you changed the course of history in your kindness and that you gave your money away, and then you went to your aunt to ask for money to see the Laurel and Hardy. That influenced people's lives, and you had a big part, a big role to play in what happened in the street with Sugihara.
I'm glad that I did what I did.
And when you read what Mrs. Sugihara wrote in that book,
Mrs. Sugihara,
when she wrote about you in the book, and did you know that she was going to write this in the book?
no idea. She asked me for a picture from after the war. That's all I had, so I gave her this picture. She put it in the book.
And reading it, this is confirmation of...
Yeah, it's written confirmation of what I'm telling.
It's unbelievable. Sally, it is incredible. It's true, it's the MS, and we are in awe of what you've done and what you've achieved, and you can be very proud. And like I said before, you must just please God for the new year. You must have all of Hashem's blessings.
Thank you.
Be gesund, to well, nachas, brocha, and good health. May you continue in what you do and your writing, and please God, your book on your father should be published, and we'll all read it, and we all appreciate so much what you've done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a book. It's about my cousin in Vienna. The University professor.
And she invited you.
She's the one who invited me. She's the one who has a big influence in the Lithuanian. The Lithuanian government, they sent to meet the Queen of England, they sent her.
And she's living in Vilna today.
Yes, yeah. They wrote a book, a French guy wrote a book about her. Yeah, so it's my mishpucha.
And Sonny, if you're looking back, what would you would have done anything different? Looking back on those days and those events? Is there anything?
Yeah, I would tell my father to use the visa to go to America. That's what I would do. He should have listened to Sugihara when I told him to go.
It was like Sugihara was like a prophet.
Sugihara, his wife told me when I came to see the stamps, was July, said, tell your father it's time to leave.
And you told your father?
I told my father, but he wanted to sell the business.
Sully, that's unbelievable. It really is.
If you want to find something about the Maraja, maybe.
Okay, if you look at this picture, this is in Sully's home. There's a picture of a little boy selling, it's actually like little burkas, bread that his mother had made. There's a very famous photographer, Kadesh. He took the photos in the Kovna Ghetto. And this photo is in Yad Vashem. So I'm just going to show you one or two other pictures, and then it really, for me, it was a tremendous honor to meet with Sully. So this is the grandson of Sugihara with Sully, and you can see he's holding the picture of when Sully was in the ghetto. There's a lot of Japanese teachers that come all the way to Israel and also meet with Sully. He's very well known. What happened with Sully, I'll just show you, this was...
In this picture, Sully, it's you and...
This is Sully with Sugihara.
San Francisco. This was 2005, I think.
How old was she? 104?
So she lived, she was much younger, I think 10 years younger than her husband. Now, Sully's been...
You're with the German president.
Yeah, I was invited to the German parliament, and they introduced me to the German president.
Just showing you a few little things here. What's interesting with Sully is what happened to him. When I asked him if he got any regrets, and he said if only his father had taken the visas, but he didn't, unfortunately, because he had a business and he couldn't. And we don't know what it's like leaving a business and going with nothing. Anyway, but he said his mother and his brother were murdered. And he went through the ghetto. He went through, if you read his book, Light One Candle, it is the most horrific book. Every page is like a masterpiece. This is the whole history of the Shoah in one book. I highly recommend it. I've got mine on eBay. But it's unbelievable. Anyway, after the war, it's incredible. He was in Dachau, and he told me when I went to visit him recently that he was with Viktor Frankl in Dachau. And then they went on the death march, and he was in the snow. And he was dug out of the snow by, believe it or not, it's also like Mina Shamayim, it was American Japanese soldiers. How many of us know that there were American Japanese that volunteered to fight in the Second World War when America was fighting against Japan? There were some American Japanese that actually fought for the American army. But they saved him and they liberated Dachau as well. So this was a reunion of these American...
From the States to accompany us to Japan. This is in Japan, the Sugihara Park. These are the guys from the from the Japanese American units that saved our lives. The guy who is talking, standing next to him, is called John Sugihara from Hawaii.
These are the ones that signed your book.
These are the guys who signed my book, yeah.
Okay. Where does he live? So he lives in Ramat HaSharon. Now this book, and this is, for me, the most amazing out of all the books that I have on the topic, it was written by Yokika Sugihara. That's Mrs. Sugihara. And she has the picture of Soli in the book. And she writes there that it's very possible that it's because of this little, she put there forward, it's what she remembered, like many years later, that he was 14. She said the first night of Hanukkah, but it was Motzei Shabbos, but it doesn't matter. But she's got Soli's picture in there, and she writes, it's very possible that my husband did it because of this little Jewish boy. What's amazing about this book is if you look at the back of the book, it's got the US Vice President, Walter Mondale. He writes about the book. He was also the American ambassador in Japan. And Soli met with him when he went to Japan. It's also got it's got other writers inside this book as well. And it's quite incredible. So Soli wrote something here which I think we can leave with this message. I'm going to just show you a few more things, but he writes here that Sugihara was an amazing person. You could see the kindness in his eyes. He had a very calming personality. He was a lighthouse in a sea of darkness. So also Soli told me that his grandfather had told him that you can see the soul of a person through their eyes. And when he saw Sugihara, he saw the goodness in his eyes. Now the story about Soli and the Haftig and all this is also in a book here called Passage to Freedom, which is a small little book illustrated, and it's by Haruki Sugihara. He does the afterword to this book. But it's Japanese writers and artists. And it mentions on the very first page, it starts off, and this is it's been translated into Japanese as well. It starts with saying, there's a saying that the eyes tell everything about a person. At a store, my father saw a young Jewish boy, didn't have enough money to buy what he wanted. So my father gave the boy some of his. That boy looked into my father's eyes to thank him. He invited my father to his home. That is when my family and I went to a Hanukkah celebration for the first time. I was 5 years old. So the story it's very well entrenched in Japanese culture, the whole story with Soli and why he did it. For me, one of the most amazing things is, I mentioned that I often speak to yeshiva bochers. So I was reading Mishpacha, and if you read, it's a wonderful publication. The news editor, Benjamin Rose, is a very close friend, he's also a patient. So I saw that now they feature musicians, and what's their favorite song, and what inspired them, and what is their passion. And they've had Shveki, they've had Aaron Fried, they've had all the greats. They had also somebody who was very special, Yonatan Razal. And with Yonatan, they asked him what's his passion. He also studied at the Mir. So his passion is the mirror. So I actually phoned Jonathan, and this happened very soon after. Solly's 19. When I went to his home, he was working on Facebook. He's very active on Facebook at the age of 19. He's got many followers, and he writes prolifically on his Facebook, and it reaches to a lot of people. On one of his posts that he put on Facebook, he quoted Bihisha Amna. He said, he said, but if only we would have had our country 10 years before, my mother and my brother would have been murdered. So for me, it was very special. Now, I was very fortunate to be at the concert of Shweki in Kasaria, the very first one, and the second, but the first one was, for me, one of the most amazing experiences. I had two of my nephews who were studying in yeshiva, and we just told them, you have to come with us. My brother and I, we just schlepped them with. We went without permission. But there was Jonathan Razal and Shweki did Vihisha Abda. And it was the iconic song that is ingrained in all of us. Anyway, so what happened is that I read about Jonathan being so passionate about the mirror. So I phoned him. It was a Motzei Shabbos, I phoned him. And I asked him, like I asked most of the Bachrim, do you know how the mirror was saved? So he also said he knew about Japan. Maybe some do know about Japan, but none. In fact, in all the years that I've spoken to, I think there's less than a handful of people that have heard of Soli Ganor. You know, when I told him the story of Soli, and he was blown away, he really was, and I said, you know, Jonathan, can I ask you the biggest favor? Soli last year was in hospital over Purim, so he can't really leave his home. Can I come to you, and can you just play the Hisham Day and we'll dedicate it to Soli? He said to me, no, he's not going to do that. He said he has to meet him. He has to meet him. So just before Hanukkah, like a few months ago, wow, it was amazing because he had that special concert and that whole thing where the tape over the eyes, whatever. The next morning I opened Jerusalem Post and in the front page there's a picture of Jonathan, and I had arranged to go that Tuesday. The concert was on Monday night, and arranged to go that Tuesday. He learns in the morning in Sorotskin, so we had a very short time because he was performing that night as well, and I had to take him to Ramat Sharon. Anyway, he agreed to come with me, but he said, can't we delay it? Because I have to speak to the press and he's under such pressure. Anyway, I said, he's so looking forward to seeing you. So he came with me, and we went, and it was like Mina Shamayim, we went to see Soli. So I fetched him, he took his organ, and he came with his son. So I want to show you one of the most amazing things that I've experienced. Now with Jonathan, he's very, can we just thin the lights a little bit? He's very well known in the secular world as well. This song is on Galganaz, and it's very well known in secular circles as well. I'm sure you've all heard of Katanti. Because I could go the whole night, but you can get this on my YouTube. But I'm going to show you something. This, for me, was the most amazing experience. Because now it's coming up for Pesach, and we're all going to be singing Behisha Amda. And I think it's very special that we've heard from the composer. This song was rated in Israel the top song. When it first came out of all the songs in Israel.
Says to me, I'm alive.
there's one for each, for everyone.
Reminds her of the good old days.
I have to tell you that this song, when I had the Russian on the end of Gaza in Galilee, there was a rabbi from the army, and he sang this song, and he said, at the end, Makadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Miyadam, but don't forget to pass the ammunition.
He said, did you get that? He said, he quoted from Hijra Shamda, and he said, but at the end, don't forget to pass the ammunition. Because you have to do your own part as well. What's amazing about Solly, Larry, I think we can, what's amazing about Solly is that after the war, his father remarried a Canadian. It was a Canadian woman who came to the camps, and he got a visa to go to Canada. And Solly's father insisted that Solly goes with, and he said no. He said, when we needed a country, when we needed a place to go to, nobody wanted us. Now my own people need me. So he came here, he came to fight, and he was part of the War of Independence. He came to fight. And, you know, somebody to have gone through the Gehenna, the total Gehenna that he went through, he could have just spent the rest of his life relaxing or taking it easy, what he went through. When you read the book, you cannot believe that somebody could even remain normal after what he went through. But he came to fight here. And it is remarkable. It's something quite amazing. So I just want to, I know the time's short, but I want to show you something that's also a little bit connected with
Last, can you explain what you're supposed to do with these?
Okay, these you can take copies, they're one for each person. So I've just given you a, you can take these home, and if you need more, I'll give you more. So it just shows you the book that was written by Mr. Sugihara. And if you can, there's on YouTube, you can watch the interview, you can watch Jonathan. So on the second page, it's got the Vice President of America, what he writes about Sugihara, which is quite amazing coming from the Vice President of America. And then it's got the picture of Solly, where Sugihara's wife says that it's very possible that her husband issued the visas because of this young boy who invited the family for Hanukkah. And then the last page is Zohar Vahaftig. Now what's amazing with Zohar Vahaftig, people say, well, why didn't the Yidden that were saved, why didn't they, I mean, Sugihara, he was fired when he, after the war, they were interned in Romania. And unfortunately, they lost a son. They lived through terrible times. They lost a son died, they think he died because of, it could be malnutrition, they don't know how, but he passed away. He had no money, he had to go to Russia, he left his family, he had no kavod. He was a person non grata. He was actually fired, he had nothing. And only in around 69, there was one of the people, one of those five that went in to see a Nasri. His name was Nasri. He was in the Israeli diplomatic corps. He was in Japan, and he met with Sugihara. And then the descendants, or those from Kovna, came in Israel, invited Sugihara to come to Israel. And the Israeli government, it's very interesting, Shamir was the foreign minister before he became prime minister. And Shamir was in Japan, and Shamir met with Sugihara. And the Israeli government decided, because Sugihara couldn't afford to pay for his own son's education, that they'd give a bursary. So the son, the younger son, actually graduated from Hebrew University and was paid for by the Israeli government. And Sugihara came, and you can see on the very last page that I've given here, there's a picture of Sugihara with his son in Israel in '69. What was interesting is that Sugihara only became well known after he was awarded Chasidei Olam. That was in '85, a year before he was niftar, a year before he died. Yad Vashem awarded him. And one of the criteria that they said why they didn't do it earlier is because you had to endanger your life in order to be regarded as Chasidei Olam. And they said as a diplomat, he didn't, but he actually did, as his wife mentions in the movie, they did kind of endanger their lives. But they did give him the Chasidei Olam, and that was publicized in all the papers. It was in the news media all over the world. And when this book, Visas for Life, it's a very, very important book, they made a movie of it, that I actually bought the movie when I was in Kovna in the museum. It's a brilliant movie. It's in Japanese with English subtitles. It was shown on Japanese television. And at the end of the movie, it's got the original footage of Mrs. Sugihara going back to the Kovna, to the consulate. When they showed that movie on Japanese television, immediately, it's like with Schindler. If I had to ask all of you, how many of you heard of Schindler before the book or the movie? Nobody knew about him. Once the movie and the book was made, or the book was made first, he became a sensation. That's also with Anne Frank. When they publicized her diary, all of a sudden she became extremely well known. The same happened with Sugihara. When they showed the movie, and it's in Japanese, and it's extremely well made, the movie. I've got it and I've shown it. It's a phenomenal movie. It's actually very, very, it's very sympathetic to the Yidden, and it's got original footage. It's very well done. But what happened, Aaron, I'll be a minute. What happened is that they showed the movie on Japanese television, and immediately Sugihara became an instant hero. So that's actually quite an interesting thing. So I just want to show you, this is, I mentioned to you about how...
What is your name?
How well known he is.
Okay.
This is in Bandung, Indonesia.
You have a booth and it's called The Rising Sun Steps. And I asked you if you know about Sugihara.
Yes.
And you've heard of
Very
him?
well known. In Japan, most people know about. Oh, maybe not.
No, a lot of teenagers even know. He's a big.
Teenagers, they don't collect stamps.
But they know
She
about
was a state
Sugihara.
leader in Bandung, but she had heard of
Yes, because of
Sugihara.
the history.
And I've got a stamp from her, a Japanese stamp of Sugihara.
He did it against Japanese policy, I think. He just did it secret.
And what did he do?
He let the Jewish people escape from which country? I forgot.
Just Lithuania. He was in.
Okay. I just want to show you, this is, there has been one or two people that have said that, how do we know that it's really true? The whole thing was solely but it really happened, and a lot of skeptics as well. So 2 days ago, I was very fortunate to hear Dina Parat and Professor Bauer. She's a world expert on the Shoah. So this is
It's a great honor and a privilege to have Professor Dina Parat. You've heard of Sali Ganor?
Of course, we know him. No, because when I was working on publishing Abraham Torres' diaries, I interviewed every survivor of Kovno that I could.
And he was there. He was in Kovna. He was in
Yes, yeah, he was a young boy.
Yeah, he was 12.
Yeah,
okay. There's also Martin Gilbert, the late Martin Gilbert, who's the World Authority historian. So he did a documentary on the Kovna Ghetto, and Sonny's in that documentary as well. But I just want to show you something.
How did you get that video?
Okay, so how did we get these videos? Well, so Sonny gave me the original VHS that I got converted to a DVD, and Zora Fahatig's son also gave me a VHS, which I also got converted. Now, I just want to show you something actually quite amazing, and I think it's really important that we watch this. This is about the meal. Larry, if you
My
could just...
name is Chaya Milikowski. I'm one of the survivors who was helped by your father. Thanks to him, I sit here, and my family sits here.
I will never forget what he did for us. My children know the whole history.
This is the function of a lady's mother.
Thanks to your father, they are here. I am here. And everyone is happy to see you here, to greet you, to welcome the son. Let's hope you will continue in his footsteps, do whatever he did for us. And I wish you health, long years, and lots of family pleasure. It's a wonder to see your wife, to see your family. It's a continuation of him. We will never forget him. If you'll always remember you. Thanks a million in the name of everyone. I am sure that in my age, I am almost one of the survivors who came to Japan and who saw the country and the well-being of the people, the will of the people, how they were helpful. I remember once I didn't find the way to the hotel where we stayed. I asked someone in the store. He left the store, he went to show me where he didn't want me to go and to look around. And once I went on a bus, and I had a card in English. No one in the bus knew how to read English. A young fellow offered himself. He went down with us to the police station. There he found someone who spoke English and read English. Afterwards, he didn't let us go. I was with my mother, and he took us to the hotel. He paid the car fare on the bus. And every day he used to come and brought us flowers. He was so happy to be helpful, like the whole nation of the Japanese. I'm really grateful. In the name of everyone, I thank you and your family.
We are happy. We are happy to be here together with you, Mr. Sugihara, and your wife and your friends here. After Rabbanit Meliskowski spoke, I don't know what I can add. I have to repeat her words, what she said about the Japanese and about the feeling that we have for what your father did. In Jewish tradition, the trait of Hakarat HaTov is to be thankful. If someone did you a good deed, you're always in debt to him. It never ends. And I'm not speaking about a small deed, but something so tremendous that your father did, and he risked not only his career, he risked his family, he risked his future. And we all know that for years he suffered because of that. And he still was very strong in his will to help. And no one could sway him away from that. And we will never forget. I look at my family around. My daughter is here, my husband is here. Like he said, people think that he was also in Shanghai. It was also one. He wasn't, but he knows the story so well, and he feels it. And I look around, I see my family, I see my children, my grandchildren. I have already a few great-grandchildren. They will also hear the story, the wonderful story, what happened. My sisters-in-law are here too. Their husbands, one of them was in Shanghai. My brother, a younger brother than me, he was in Japan also. He was very young. He was passed away a few months ago. My older sister was, of course, she had many memories. She already was also passed away around 4 years ago. And all the families, we all know what happened, and we live it again, we live through. In schools, I speak about it to students, young and older ones, and I try to give over the feelings that we have, because the thankfulness that we feel will never end. And thank you and your family for being here and sharing this wonderful meeting here together. Thank you. And I have the pleasure to sit next to your wife. I told her that she can taste everything. She doesn't need to diet at all.
What do you okay? What do you feel? How do you feel to meet the son of Sugihara today? How do you feel?
I feel that I was saved. I feel that I am alive. Just thanks.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Same situation.
I look around and I see here people that are survivors, and I see my family. I told you about my children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and think about one person who did something so wonderful, and so many lives owe him a debt that can never be paid enough, I must tell you. That's the main thing I always think about. How thankful we have to be, because like the Rabbanit said, we are sitting here, we're alive, our children will go on, tradition goes on, Judaism goes on, the yeshiva goes on, and one person did such a wonderful deed against many that didn't want him to do it. That's for sure amazing. To see the son of Mr. Sugihara is really feeling that he's alive, he's still alive with us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Rivka Ezrachi. My maiden name was Shmulevitz. My father was the head of the yeshiva then, and he went all the way along via Japan and later Shanghai.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is her name's Tamara Tzedek. She couldn't make it tonight, but she's a Japanese who's converted. It's amazing. I just want to show you one little thing, and this is taken from the mirror. You can actually see what the mirror was. We'll take questions. I just want to end off with something very important. I think it's vital for all of us to know. The mirror, and we have a Bocher from the mirror, Bocher from the American, but the mirror, when it came to America, it reignited. And Ken Eretz Israel had a patient that I saw a week ago that her husband was one of the first, in the 50s, there were only 70 Bocherim in the mirror, Ken Yerushalayim. Ganor today, the mirror is flourishing, it's unbelievable. But the mirror, when it came to America, it re-established Torah, it reignited the flame of Torah, and when people thought that Torah was finished, that Orthodox Judaism was over after the devastation and the destruction and the total annihilation, what happened in Europe, the Bocherim of the Mir a lot had the scout of reigniting the flame of Torah all over the world. So I just want to end off and then we'll take questions. Sugihara's wife wrote something which I think is so poignant and so important to know. In the end of her book, she says, "As for myself, I've come to believe that it's important to tell people about what Shreiner did and what he stood. I want to share the story with people all over the world because what he did was something that everyone should be able to do. They should listen to their conscience and find the courage to follow the right path. For my husband and me, it was our greatest delight to meet people who treasured Shreiner's act, which he saw only as natural. In my story, my personal experience can help young people understand the need for peace on a personal level. I do not mind sharing my personal feelings. If people can learn from my stories, I will tell them till the last day in this world." So I think I really want to thank you all for coming here tonight, that the memory of Sugihara, of Sali, Baruch Hashem, you should live till Maybe Esrim, all of those that made this nace, miracle of the mirror, the whole mirror is a nace. So I want to thank you all for coming here this evening. I want to wish you all a Tag Sameach when you sing the Yisha Anda. I think it's got a bit more significance now that the composer...
Question before you dismiss it.
Okay, we're not dismissing. Okay, Erin, we can go ahead. Sure.
Number one.
Do you want to come up, Erin?
Thank you.
And I really, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you all for coming. I know it wasn't easy, and at this time of the year, but I just hope that you got something out of tonight.
Yes, I worked for several years for Yad Vashem, and just to let you know, with regard to the righteous, the diplomats who are recognized by Yad Vashem do not have to have risked their lives. They do have to have done something extraordinary against, in most cases, against the rules of their foreign ministries. But the exception among the righteous is that all the diplomats that are featured in the Holocaust History Museum, and I was the English editor of the Holocaust History Museum that opened in 2005, all of them are diplomats who maybe risk their career, but not their lives in doing what they do. But if you still look back at the times, what Imperial Japan was doing in Asia at the time, and the spirit of murder and genocide in China, and etc., and the Japanese educational system at the time, it just makes the light of Sugihara that much greater, because he came from a society at that time that was among the most vile that you could imagine. Not as vile as what was experienced in Europe, but in Asia, millions died at the hands of the Japanese. Now, I want to make one suggestion. There are so many motifs in this story that are 110% for Spielberg. And we have to get Spielberg to make
Spielberg is in this book.
Yes.
He met with Mrs. Sugihara.
Well, will he make a movie on it? And they also bring in the Japanese-American war veterans.
In this picture, Sally, it's you and...
It's an amazing story for Hollywood.
Absolutely.
The boy, the little boy, what was going in Vilna?
Has everybody got a copy of this? Okay. I think...
Has anybody talked to him about it?
They are
If it's in the book, we got to let the second shirt
I think
fall.
they are trying to make it out. It's in the process.
Yeah?
I
Thank
read
you.
biography of, it was in Yiddish, translated to English, of a buffer in
You want to
Germany.
come? I think it's
I'll
easier
speak
with
loud, I
the...
was a teacher.
No, it's good.
And he described the running away from Germany and not knowing, I mean, if you could put it in your mind, not knowing the next minute where they were going to be. And they would stop every once in a while. This is the way it was described in the biography. And the Bukrim would get together and try to do something from the Mishnah or something from their learning. You know, how do we go? How do we proceed? And I found it so fascinating because they would just like stop and analyze and think of all their possibilities. It was such a Jewish thing, you know. So here they were, had nothing, no food. And they said, well, we're going to go to Lithuania because at that point, Lithuania was still free. And their idea was to go to Israel. They hadn't had the slightest idea that, maybe you could correct me, but they didn't have in their wildest dreams that they were going to survive by going east. Their dream was to go to Israel. So I found this very they took every little opportunity, those 200 or 400 people, to have this little shred of hope that they could go that day and maybe find their way. You know, they never gave up. It was just like, we'll never, ever give up.
I just want to mention, I don't know if you know, with the Ocean of Arabi, when they were called to the Japanese said, what's going on here? How come there's Jews still in Japan, so many Jews? So they had to appear before the military, and they went to Tokyo. It's very interesting what happened at that meeting. I actually have it on a video as well. But they asked the very famous, why do the Germans hate you so much? And it was the Amshin of Arabi, who was, I think it was Eloi, he was just such a kochen, such a clever, such an amazing person. He answered, There was also the Rosh Yeshiva of Tels was there, but the Amshanav Rebbe said, I don't know why the Germans hate us Asians. And the Japanese said, and this was the naval
Asians, right.
the head of the naval academy of the Japanese naval navy. He said, how do you know they hate us as well? So he was such a worldly man, the Amshanav Rebbe. He said, I have read that there was a diplomat in Berlin that wanted to marry a Japanese, and he couldn't get a marriage certificate because they said that the Japanese was inferior. And they checked it out and they saw it was true. And they said, you can stay in Kobe, and they stayed, and then they went to Shanghai. They got permission. Because what was very interesting, last year I was in South Africa, and I was watching CNN, and I saw the most amazing statistic. If I had to ask you all, how many refugees do you think Japan took in last year? Would you hazard a guess?
2.
Okay, I see a lot of luck. No, you're pretty close, it was 28. There were thousands and thousands that applied, but Japan just don't take in. And what's amazing, and I think this is also not so stressed, those that got the visas, Sugihara said to them, you must say, long live Japan. He told them what to say in Japanese, long live Japan. So they thought that the Japanese were giving the visas. They didn't think that Sugihara was going against his own government to give it. And I started the movie by what he did as intelligence. So Sugihara wasn't just a diplomat. He was also an intelligence diplomat. So he really did go against his government in more ways than one. So the whole question, why did he do it? And I think, this is something I'm glad I didn't forget. At the back of this book, which is incredible, you can get these also on eBay, there's a Jewish proverb that they quote. If you save the life of one person, it's as if you've saved the whole world. But then they give a Japanese proverb at the bottom. Even a hunter cannot kill a bird that comes to him for refuge. And I think Sugihara, this is who he was. People came to him for refuge, and he was prepared to give up everything.
Just 3 hours ago.
Can you?
I can say from here.
No. It's people. This is really important. If you could. Yeah, we just heard. This is something quite amazing.
Yeah, 3 hours ago, I was on the phone with a friend from Muncie, and I mentioned that we were coming here tonight about Sugihara. He said to me, "I just want you to mention, I'm alive today because my father was one of those Altamira Bacher that he saved. Who's Rabbi Joseph in Borough Park, and our friend is A.B. Joseph in Muncie, and his father was one of those Bachrim." He said, "Please mention it."
When we went on our tour to Lithuania, one of the Canadians that was on our tour, their uncle got one of the last visas from Sugihara. And there's so many. Also, there's the vice head of Hatzalah in Beit Shemesh. His grandfather got a visa from Sugihara. He gave me a copy of the visas.
I should mention something else. Fascination in Asia, and just to tell you a little bit about the experience of Asia. 50 years ago, I was with the American government in Vietnam in a civilian capacity, and on the way I took a week's vacation in Japan, 1967. In fact, I have somewhere in my archives the Japanese Times from May 1967, the English language newspaper in Tokyo, saying Nasser has closed off the Straits of Tiran. A fascinating experience. Has anyone here been to Japan, to visit in Japan? I want you to know that one of the most fascinating things you can find on YouTube is, and showing the fascination of the Japanese in particular and Asians generally with the Jews, you can watch on YouTube Fiddler on the Roof in Japanese. And it's amazing. I highly recommend it. Fiddler on the Roof in Japanese.
and then we'll kill him.
Just one short comment that
Now that you want to kill him.
I'm so loud you can hear me through the wall. Rabbi Kahana of blessed memory was a student at the Mir Yeshiva in Brooklyn. That's what we're coming to.
We had a dinner in 1986 in Brooklyn, the Mir Yeshiva, Brooklyn, where I learned, and we honored Sugihara.
You were there?
I was there, yeah. I was there, and I never saw so many Japanese at the dinner, and we raised lots and lots of money from all the great Japanese companies at the time. They all put in ads. And we honored his son, because he was around 86. Was he alive?
In 86, he passed away in 86.
He wasn't there, his son was there. His son was there at the dinner. He raised a lot of money.
It's great. If you can come.
So once again, I really want to thank you all.
If you want to say something. If you could make it's so important. It's,
Rabbi Edwin Ramsey.
My father's grandbrother was one of the people who got Sugihara visa. There are lists on the internet. I found my father's on the internet. It says Shaya Mashbaum. It's in the poetry. M-A-S-Z-B-A-U-M. And Shayas, S-Z-A-J-A, Shaya. And he indeed was in the Warsaw, in the outbreak of the war, went to Vilna, came to Governor, and on August 2nd, you have the dates, August 2nd, 1940, got visa number 804. I don't have the visa. I'd love to see it like that. The document itself, I know the day and the number of the visa he got, and
this was your father?
It's my father, Shai Mashbaum. Father Shai Mashbaum, on, as I said, August 2nd, 1940, got his Sugihara visa, went to, in fact, to Japan, ultimately made it to the United States, where I was born, as you can hear, and he had 2 children of mine, and between my sister and I, I have 16 children, grandchildren of my father, and there were, over 80 great-grandchildren of my father, between myself and my sister. It's all because of Sugihara.
Did your father used to speak a lot about Sugihara?
Never said a word. But
Did you hear of Ganor before this evening?
Yes, because I know about Sugihara. But never, my father was about Europe, his experiences, never said a word. So, from research I have.
So Ganor is now about, how old is he?
He's 90. When I met him, he was 89.
Totally all there.
You can go on Facebook, you can become a Facebook friend of his. He is unbelievable.
And he lives by himself?
No, his wife. And he has a son, and his daughter unfortunately passed away, but he's got grandchildren. He's got a nephew that studied in the Mir. He lives in Ramat HaSharon, and he's...
My legal partner, I'm an attorney, my partner lives in Ramat HaSharon. I'm just
I can
thinking
give you his contact details with the
would you
greatest
want to be
pleasure.
contacted?
Sure, I've taken a lot of people to see him.
Sure. I think there's only a year or 2 years ago, the second oldest survivor passed away. He was my Rebbe in Torah Semis, and now there's only one survivor from the original Mir Yeshiva left, I believe. I don't know, I didn't hear lately if he's still alive, but this one that just passed away a year or 2 ago was he was the second living survivor, oldest survivor.
What's his name?
Rabbi Gitlis. I had him in the lower part of the Yeshiva Torah Semis.
I'm from Torah Semis.
Yeah? You remember Rabbi Gitlis?
What year?
In the 50s.
I was 46 to 51.
Same time.
When it was on 12th Avenue.
12th Avenue, yeah. He was teaching there then. There's one survivor left from that original Mir Yeshiva, if he's still alive.
There have been skeptics that have said that maybe Sugihara did it for the money, because he had to pay a nominal fee. they say that the visas, the transit visas that Sugihara did was a quarter of the price that the Dutch ones were. But to annul that notion, you heard his wife saying that when they were at the Metropole in the hotel just before they were leaving, he still gave out visas when he was on the train.
Yeah.
He just did visas. He didn't take a cent for
I
it.
thought I once saw footage with him signing on the train. Did you ever see that?
Yeah. We can, if you can come out.
I'll speak from her. The whole mystery about
It's easier. Sure.
in my mind,
Hold on,
I've seen this movie about Sugihara before, but the mystery in my mind is, as this gentleman said, Sugihara came from a culture that was militaristic and warlike, which was the mood in Asia at that time. What made him do this?
Yeah.
He was, as my booby would say in Yiddish, an eins and a solches, which means a one and an only. What made him stand up above his culture? What was it in his history, in his personality, in his character, in his family, that gave him the strength to do this? Because he knew he would be shamed. The Japanese government is very strict about anybody going against it, and he knew he would be shamed afterwards. What gave him the courage to do it? And the other question, it's just a question that, you know, could be addressed in a philosophy class and should be taught in the educational system throughout the world, because all children and people should strive for this kind of
individuality.
Yes, conscience. But this gentleman, I want to ask him, you worked at Yad Vashem. Were there any other Japanese diplomats?
He's
He's the only Japanese.
the only Asian.
The only Asian. So that's
the only Japanese.
That's the only Asian.
There are a dozen or so diplomats.
No, but he's
who
the
have
only-
been
he's the only
recognized as
Japanese.
righteous.
He's the only
One
Asian.
of the most famous is Portuguese,
Yes.
Susha.
Yes, I've read about him.
And there are others as well.
Thank you. I just, on ending, I want to thank both a very good friend of mine, Larry Pfeffer. Larry encouraged me to do the talk tonight, and I really tremendous gratitude to you, Larry, because without your encouragement, I don't think I would have done this. And I want to thank you all for coming here, because it is a big sacrifice to make. So, and Lowell for having the retail branch and for hosting us, and the OU for having us this evening. I just hope you've gained something from this, but I think that movie, when you saw Mrs. Sugihara crying, it just, there's no words to describe one's feeling of gratitude, what these people did. It's like what Sonny once said, it was like a lighthouse in a sea of darkness.
Everyone say something.
Larry? This is a very good close friend of mine, Larry Fenner.
First of all, I was really very impressed by how you put this together. I know how much research must have gone into it.
We don't hear.
I know how much research must have gone into it, and I wonder how many nights you slept actually. Okay. I wanted to do some reflection about what I learned from this. I was very impressed by the fact that the Japanese are going on a pilgrimage for their own hero. Somebody is a positive figure. And I think it's an encouragement, and I'll try to say this positively. I think it should be an encouragement to us Jews to do the same thing for our heroes during the Shoah. To Rabbi Weissman, the building where Rabbi Weissman lived in Gizi Fleischman, in Bratislava. The building where George Montel lived in Geneva. The man who stopped the trains to Auschwitz. The building where Hillel Koch lived in Israel, Palestine, or where he lived in New York when he was in New York. And because of him, the War Refugee Board was set up, primarily because of him. According to David Wyman, Professor David Wyman, the War Refugee Board led to the rescue of 200,000. And we used to hold annual events, many of them here, on January 17th, when Wallenberg was abducted from Budapest, where I was an infant at the time. And at one of we used to invite ambassadors. And one of the ambassadors told me that he suggested to his foreign ministry, an ambassador from Europe, he suggested to his foreign ministry to put up a sign thanking diplomats who saved Jews. That didn't happen. But he told me this, and once you hear something like this, and you're obligated to do something. So I was bugging, in quotes, our foreign ministry for about 10 years. And finally, this International Holocaust Memorial, they put up a huge memorial or something on the wall of the foreign ministry. And there are 36 diplomats there. I did some research Well, I suggested it to them, and I found, based on other people's research, about 85 diplomats. And I hope that we're going to honor all of these diplomats who did something for us during our difficult time. So few cared about us.
I just said one more word.
Yes.
No.
And the Israel Center wants to close, so we'll have to conclude with that.
Now, I just spent 3 days at the International Conference on Anti-Semitism at the Binyanei Umah. You may have heard about it.
Where was it?
At Binyanei Umah. And in preparation for my participation in the conference from the audience, I wrote a piece on waking up the nations to the Shoah as prelude. How can we get the various nations of the world, not the Aryan nations, but all the others, the Slavs, the Arabs, the black Africans, to realize what was coming next for them from the mania of race purification. And this is a thought piece. Whoever would like it can have a copy of it. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Larry. Thank you to our live studio audience tonight, so many of whom are from the Near Yeshiva. Thank you. And to conclude, number one, a lady said, what made Semple Sugihara do this? Actually answers the question in the video we saw, where he says, to disobey my government would be dishonor, but to disobey my God would be a greater dishonor. So he has a situation where the whole thinking, it's not about making cheshbonot, it's a totally different kind of thinking. It's about what's right, what's wrong, honor, dishonor, shame, honor. Those are concepts which should be encouraged in Israel and the Jewish world. And perhaps because of the terrible experiences we've been through, it's very hard to understand, oh, he did it for the money? Semple Sugihara, as you heard, lost his job and was in disgrace in Japan till the end of his life. And he knew that would happen. I've heard this comment before. Oskar Schindler did it for the money. We now know from additional records after Schindler's List that he gave more money than he had. He gave everything for the Jews he saved. And again, because of the terrible experiences of the last 1,800 years, well, what's the angle? Let's make cheshbonot. There's got to be an angle. Sometimes there is an angle. Sometimes, I'll give you another example, which you may have seen in the press 2 years ago. Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's favorite commando, SS Obersturmbannführer. We heard about Shamir going. Where did Shamir go? Someone mentioned Prime Minister Shamir went somewhere and did something.
He was the foreign minister. He was in Japan.
Okay. There's somewhere else that Shamir went. He was also in the Mossad. And in the early 1960s, two Mossad representatives met with Otto Skorzeny, who was then living as an escaped war criminal in Spain. And they said, we are here to ask you to help us, because he met them in a bar, they spoke German, and then he thought, aha, he invited them home, you're here to kill me, so he took out a gun, you're here to kill me. And they said, no, you're half right, we are from the Mossad, we're not here to kill you, and if you kill us, the next time representatives from the Mossad come, you'll never meet them, you'll just have your brains blown out from a distance. They said, what do you want? And they said, we want you to help us. There are Nazi scientists going from Germany to Egypt for the rocket program, and we want to wipe them out. Will you help us? We're prepared to pay you a great deal of money. And Otto Skorzeny said two things. One, I will help you, and two, I won't accept a penny. He died about a few years ago. The Mossad released the records that he then came to Israel for training. This is an SS officer. Obersturmbannführer is like a colonel or something. And he went with Shamir to Germany, and he found some of his old friends. Let's go for a walk in the forest. He killed them himself and buried the bodies. And he would never tell anybody why he did this. I actually think there's a very simple reason. Of course, it's impossible to know our own minds and hearts. As Jeremiah said, the heart is deceitful beyond all. So I think it's very simple. He was a soldier. He liked action. He was a commando. But he didn't consider himself a war criminal. And he saw things that were done. He was a man of honor. He said, I'm an SS officer. I'm the Waffen SS. That's not me. And he thought, oh, you're going to do it again? And he wouldn't accept the penny. He said, also, I don't need your money. I'm rich. So here is this Austrian, 6'4", and he said, I will help you. And Shamir was in the Mossad at the time, and went with him on one of those missions to Germany. He killed him himself. And he's quite happy to do so. Why? Again, the issue of honor, which is, that's not me. I can't undo what was done, but if I can take a few with me before I go, I'm happy to help you. He never took a penny for this. The same way with Schindler and Sugihara, and it's understanding, okay, so what's in it for you? What's the angle? What's the cheshbonot? This kind of thinking comes out, this deformed thinking comes out of too many years in the diaspora, too many years of persecution. So these were men, there were also women, of honor who do things because it's about honor, respect, self-respect. It's an existential reality. It has nothing to do with money in your bank account. So to conclude, we want to thank Dr. Glassman for this inspiring talk, and the film, and for allowing Pfeffer, again, who was saved by a Christian family when he was a baby in Budapest, for suggesting it. We hope to do more. We want to wish everyone, our viewers and listeners, and our studio audience, wherever you come in the land of Israel, Shabbat Shalom, and the Chag Sameach for the upcoming Passover in a week, and Shavuot Pentecost in 9 weeks. We also have Lag Bomer coming up, and guess who's coming to dinner? Remember the movie? Sidney Poitier, is he still alive? President and Mrs. Trump are probably coming on May 14th for the opening of that embassy. Again, people, what's in it for him? What's in it for him? He's doing it because he believes in it, because he thinks it's right. Actually, because he learned the Bible from his mother, Mary MacLeod, from the Outer Hebrides Islands when he was a boy, and he speaks about this. And he's fulfilling an old vision in his last years. He doesn't need your money. It's coming from another planet. He'll be here. Air Force One is coming back May 14th, 8 weeks. I've written down, I cross off the days, 8 weeks in closing. We're going to have an embassy here. So again, today is Thursday, March 22nd, 2018, the 6th day of Nisan, 5778. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach, Lag Bomer Sameach, and thank you to our viewers and listeners for watching and listening. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.